evening. I call this meeting to order at 6:17 p.m. Directors Teitler, Steph, Torres, and myself are present in person, and Director Kuhlenberg is joining virtually tonight, meaning we have a quorum. Thank you to our interpreters. Our interpreter on Zoom, Janet, will share the interpretation instruction with our participants, and then we can turn on the interpretation function. Everyone attending in person, regardless of your language, is encouraged to grab a headset.
Muy bajo, pero sí.
Gracias. The first business in order is the approval of the agenda. Directors, are there any proposed changes to the agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to add a 5-minute break to our agenda after our, excuse me, let me get there, our public comment.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor? Say
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I don't see. Directors, you have just approved the agenda as amended. Our next agenda item is our opening celebration and updates by our superintendent, Dr. Rodriguez.
Hey, thank you. I'll try to be brief and concise. We haven't had one of these board meetings since before spring break. So some of this feels like old news, but I think it's important to put into the public record. Right before spring break, as you all know, we announced that the new principal of Carbondale Middle School was Mr. Michael Logan. And so I just wanted to share that out publicly and recognize that as one of our recent celebrations. We've begun our Portrait of a Graduate and core values work. As you all know, that's work that we're engaged in this spring with the intention of using what we learned from this process to guide our strategic planning process in the fall. So we have a survey out. We've sent it via staff newsletter and also community newsletter, and you can find it online. We encourage you, students, alumni, parents, community members, staff members, to give us feedback on the Portrait of a Graduate and the core values work. And then also, it feels like old news, but recently Chief Markham, Chief Gatlin, and I attended the Housing Summit. And as all of you already know, one of the things that we learned is that the cost of living and housing is a challenge for nearly all of the local industries in this valley, and has been for multiple years. What was really neat is that the panelists shared both hardships that they encountered in recruiting and retaining their workforces in the morning, and then in the afternoon, the panelists were more focused on solutions. Also, this is funny to me because I feel like it's old news, but we recently released a podcast with Chief Gatlin, and I were talking a little bit about the housing challenge. You can find those on YouTube or Spotify. We have them in English and in Spanish as well. Recently, our interim chief of HR, Begonia Platt, attended the Colorado Educator Recruiter Fair with a couple of our school leaders. There were more than 300 candidates that attended the event, and we were able to make some connections that felt promising for us in terms of recruitment for our vacancies that we have for next year. And then a personal celebration and shout out. I want to shout out Mr. John Mao, who invited me to come to his ELD class, and I did sort of a guest presentation for their career focused unit with ELD 1 students, which included the longest tenured student in that class had been in the country for 6 months. The shortest tenured student in that class had been in the country for 2 weeks. And then Also, a shout out to Miss Muriel Moore, teacher at Glenwood Springs High School, who invited me to the induction ceremony for the National Spanish Honor Society. We actually had 41 new students who were inducted, which is a pretty big group, and really proud of them. And then lastly, today we sent out some information regarding Basalt Elementary School Early Childhood Education Center and visioning process that we'd like to invite the community to participate in if available. I think happening next week. That concludes my updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Rodriguez. The next business in order is a presentation from Dr. Cox and Chief Park on the student survey data.
Thank you. Dr. Cox is joining us via Zoom. We'll be co-presenting. Leadership dropped off.
We're trying to get the other presenter online with us.
I can actually. Lindsay, all right, let's go ahead and try that again. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And Chief Park, if you wouldn't mind starting the slide deck, that'd be helpful. I could just present. Let's present. Is that off? Okay. Here we go. Okay, so in December, our annual survey for student survey was administered for the 2022 and 2023 school year. And the survey was given to our kindergarten through 12th grade students, and they were able to give feedback to their teachers on a variety of different topics. And so we'll see that a little bit about that here. Really, when we're thinking about the purpose of the survey, we want to be able to gather some perception data so that teachers can see how they're impacting and building relationships with their students and provide some information so that they can engage in self-reflection and growth as they think about their practice in the classroom. And it's also helpful for the student perception data to be provided to us as district leaders to figure out where we're doing well, where we're thinking about what we need to prioritize as it relates to student belonging and their experience. Just additional history and context. The survey administration was interrupted by the pandemic. It was not administered in 2020. It was administered in 2021, but it was only administered to students, and the teacher survey was actually canceled last year. It was administered this year. So when we think about the survey design of the school, there's two surveys that students took. It was a school survey and the teacher survey. For the school, you can see sort of the categories that students were asked questions about. So in school belonging, it was students were answering questions on whether they feel that they're valued members of a school community. Grit was on students' ability to persevere through setbacks and achieve goals. For school learning strategies, questions were asked on how students were using strategies to actively manage their own learning. Questions about valuing of schools, how much students feel the school is interesting, important, and useful. Health and wellness was first added in 2015-16, specifically to ask questions about their own health and their wellness. And then there were some open response questions that were started in fall of 2018. And it was an opportunity for students to just highlight what works well at their school and what they feel needs to have improvement. Oops. When you're looking at the teacher survey, which is on the right-hand side, the questions about pedagogical effectiveness was about instructional methods and deliberative content in their classrooms. Question about classroom climate is on the overall classroom climate that includes physical climate, social climate, psychological environment. Expectations of rigor is on the extent to which their teacher holds them to high expectations around effort, understanding, persistence, and performance. And a question might sound like, my teacher has high expectations for me, and the students would answer on a scale. Question about classroom engagement, regard to students' attention to and the investment in what goes on in the classroom. And then there's a category in teacher and student relationships where care and support for students' personal development and well-being are asked of the student. When we look at the response rates, you'll see that 2019, and then we skip 2020. So there's 2021 and 2022. Again, the teacher survey was not administered in 2021, just the school survey was administered. It was administered, both surveys were administered this past December. So you'll see the comparison there. Typically, the response rates are around 80%. And so it's a little bit lower in the 2022 school year. We did find that, like I said, the district response rates were lower than historical comparisons, but it varied by school and by level. So by elementary level, middle, and high school levels in terms of completion. Some bright spots to share, and you also got the infographic that shows some selected questions. Overall, there were positive gains between 2021 and 2022 on the school surveys. When we're thinking about making returns to pre-pandemic conditions, we're on our way there. And another highlight is that students that reported that the adults at the school made them feel safe. At 78% has a positive response in grades 3 to 5, and a 63% grades 6 to 12. And what was great in kindergarten through second grade is that 91% of students felt that their teacher cared about them a lot. And the green words are ones that are actually from the question. There's some areas for improvement. We're still getting back to what our quote normal is in the district in terms of student survey. And also the previous teacher pandemic that was administered, if you remember, was in 2019. So and that was pre-pandemic, one was not administered 2020. Overall, there's a lag in returning to the pre-pandemic favorability rates on the teacher survey. There's drops in categories across comparing 2019 and 2022. Another thing that is that the neutral responses are counted with the negative responses. And so if that's the response, when we actually looked a little bit closer at that data, there were more responses in the neutral categories than there were in previous years. Not the case every single percent of the time, but it's important to note that those neutral responses are counted in the unfavorable response rates. Overall school belonging is an area for improvement, feeling connected to adult at school. And again, this varies between levels as well. In grades 6 through 12, it's persistent as areas for improvement. It's identified previously as an opportunity for growth. The way we use the student survey results, we engage in a data protocol practice with our school leaders in January. And then and along with our instructional leaders as well, school leaders presented the data to their school staffs, the school data, and teachers received their individual teacher data. It was used in conversations around the mid-year conversation times. And in some cases, with some teachers, they decided to use that to as part of their individual growth projects. Okay, and then here we are. We want to actually provide that in January, February, so that schools and teachers also had time to act on whatever they were taking away as the biggest learnings and priority areas for student surveys. And then here in April, we're releasing it publicly to you all and to posting it on our website. Any questions?
Chief Park. It's now time for board discussion. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share any comments. We will begin with Director Stepp.
Thank you, Chief Park and Dr. Cox. Great work as usual. I mean, you addressed this and we're kind of getting back to pre-pandemic levels, but it seems like the participation rate, went down even from last year. Are the school leaders, I'm trying to think of my question here. When the school levels have their meetings, do you look at the state as well, or do you just look at it at each individual school? Because I know they vary by school, but I think it would help like if all the high schools saw the same data and like, okay, what are you doing to increase this, and so I'm sure it's all part of the professional development for the teachers, but why do you think that it's so much lower this year, the participation rate?
That's a good question. I think that I have some anecdotal data. I don't know that this is every single reason why, but I think in terms of participation, it is administered as a school. I think there's also time, with the paper surveys in the elementary. I think the question about upper levels, I don't know exactly why. It's a lower participation rate than before. Our leaders did in that actually January session where we met with all of our leaders, they did get into groups by levels to discuss where are you seeing some either good completion or good improvement and what have you been doing. And so it was an opportunity for them to learn from each other and what they're finding works and what doesn't.
Is this a survey that we developed in-house, or is this a third-party survey, or
It's a panorama survey.
Panorama?
Mhm.
I knew that, sorry. So I love that you point out both the bright spots, like we are making improvement. We're not quite there yet, and then the areas to focus on for areas of improvement. It's a little concerning that I thought we had 2 minutes at the high school level. So hopefully we can focus on that. Thanks.
Director Kuhlenberg.
Hi, can you all hear me? Yeah. Thank you,
Yes.
Chief Park, and thank you, Dr. Cox, for putting this together. This is definitely helpful to see. I am interested on the student belonging piece. I just want to understand a little better the data there. And I don't know if Chief Park, if you can answer this question or if this is better for Dr. Cox, but under school belonging and the infographic, I'm wondering how we got to the 70% and 48% numbers for grades 3, 5, and 6, 12. If that is like an average of how much people feel they belong at school from completely down to not belonging at all, or if there was a separate question for that, because that's obviously one of our it's very important to us as a district, is ensuring that students feel that sense of belonging.
Yep. If you look at the bottom of that page of that infographic, it does show you the percentage for grades 3 to 5, which is the green bar line, and then grades 6 through 12, which is purple. So the percentage of 48% is the sum of the percent who responded favorably, which would be completely belong a little bit, belong quite a bit. Completely belong quite a bit. Those two. The belong somewhat is counted as a neutral response, so that does not count in the favorable response total. I don't know if that answers your question.
It
Dr.
does,
Hope.
but I was just confused because the numbers don't add up. Like for grades 3-5, it's 40% on completely belong and 32% on belong quite a bit, but it shows 70 on the infographic above. So I was just wondering if it was a separate question, if we asked a couple questions on that point specifically.
I think that would be helpful for Dr. Cox, or I can get you that information.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I was just curious, mostly if we asked multiple questions around that one point. So
There,
that was all I had. So thank you.
there's more than one question that relates to the belonging, but the specific question overall, how much do you feel like you belong at your school, is the information that's included at the bottom of that first page of the infographic.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Torres.
Yes, thank you. I echo the gratitude for putting all the work and effort into this. So thank you for doing all of
Dr.
this work.
Cox for doing that.
I was curious, you mentioned that the school leaders also review the survey data. Obviously, this gives us a picture of what students are feeling, what they're thinking, but it's also, I think, just as important to look at the activities and what is taking place. And then looking at, well, if students felt like there was a lower sense of school belonging, well, what different types of activities took place? If this is in December, it would have been in August, September, October, November. Could you speak a little bit about how the school leaders are using this data to maybe look at welcoming back activities, or what perhaps has changed, or what they're looking to change to increase those areas of growth or improvement?
I can speak to it a little bit. I know it doesn't encompass everything that leaders are doing. So I just want to put out there's a deep care from our leaders and our teachers to address the numbers, just to make that clear. So I can name a couple things. Some of our schools had looked at this last year and knew that there was an intent and a push to increase their student belonging. And so there was a regular, I think, biweekly, almost like Google survey question. How much do you feel connected to an adult at your school or at our school? Who do you feel connected? Can you name someone? And it was a regular question they had included with their students to help sort of monitor. Are we, if we've set a goal that everyone will feel connected and they feel a sense of belonging, how are we monitoring that? Because we don't always have the data every single week. So that's one thing. I think there's a lot of buddy work, peer work, the time that's spent in crew. I know that, crew might look a little bit different in our schools, but there's a really intentional effort to leverage times like that to make sure students are feeling like they're connected, they're belonging. I think in terms of the welcome activities, some schools have done a day just for, let's say, like one grade, like ninth grade, for example, to come in and really just focus on them, because I think that can tend to be sometimes a hard sort of entry time. I think there's a number of things. I think that's just a couple of the things that folks are doing.
Thank you. Director Heitler.
Thank you, Chief Park, for your presentation. My question I have is, being that this is the Panorama survey, I know at least in the past when I've seen Panorama data, they have a school like percentile that compares to other schools. And so I'm curious if we know like how our district was doing as a percentile pre-pandemic 2019 compared to other districts, and how our school was doing on the same data in 22-23 as a percentile compared to other districts. And is this something specific to our district that we've seen this drop, or is that something that has been going in all the different schools districts that Panorama works with?
I don't have the exact numbers, but I do know from when looking at this, we're not far off from other schools and districts who are administering Panorama survey. We do look at the percentile comparison for our schools.
And so it's similar type data that they're seeing.
It varies by, I think it varies by level. So one thing we see here is that consistently, not just at Roaring Fork, but typically higher in elementary, starts to drop off a little bit in middle and then in high school. And that's consistent with trends that are across districts. I think there are very few, I don't know that I've found any districts with the number of secondary schools that have dramatically higher rates or
Right.
percentiles. Yeah.
Thank you. I am not sure if my question was clear, so I'm going to try this one more time.
Sorry.
I was referencing how from pre-pandemic to current, our district scores have gone down. I'm curious, and I recognize that as you go up in grades, that they constantly go down in panorama survey data. But I'm curious is how is our district doing compared to other districts in the drop off from 2019 to 2022? Have we seen that same drop off in other districts also?
Got it. I don't know the answer to that. So
And there's no like, is there that percentile which they give, like say your school is in this percentile in belonging? And then can we look at how we were from year to year? And is this something that I mean, obviously we need to be concerned because it is happening in our district, but is this a trend in their data nationwide, or is that something we can find out?
yes, I think we can find that out. But I think the thing to highlight is that we're on our way to returning to pre-pandemic in most of pre-pandemic levels. We're not quite there yet, but the trajectory and the direction is that there's an improvement in most of the indicators from last quote during pandemic.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Chief Park, I have a question about the disaggregated data. I'm wondering if you guys can provide that to board members so that we can see each school individually. And I also want to know if any of this data was sent out to the student accountability committees for each school.
I know that some school leaders did share it with them.
Is that something that we can push to ensure it's shared?
Yes.
Okay, directors, we will now have 5 minutes for open discussion.
Only thing I would maybe want to say, Director Stepp, is that when you look at the response rates, I don't know that that would have a effect on the overall data if we're getting less people responding, maybe, because I think we're going to probably get similar results from 73% than we got from 88%, a good chance. So I think the levels might be the same as far as responses, but it would be good to have that greater number of people taking the test.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's not, as far as percentages go, I mean, 73, 78 is still okay. But if we had that many last year, I mean, to me, that's kind of a flag that maybe the school leaders, I don't know, for whatever reason, there was too much going on that day, or, you know, there's probably lots of reasons across all the different schools. But it kind of shows that maybe they didn't make this a priority, or maybe there was a lot of students out that day, or, you know, who knows why, but it's just something to look at.
I would agree.
And we can't go back and fix it. So this is the data we have to work with. I would just say that I hope this becomes part of our strategic planning process over this next year. Because I think we all want to see our students feel safe and feel supported and feel like they belong, no matter where they are in their journey. And I think this needs to be a priority. So I love that we have data now. We can start comparing year over year. But yeah, we've got some work to do.
I guess just to piggyback on that, I think it's really important for us to, I mean, you know, less than 50% of our students in grades 6 to 12 feel connected to adults in the schools. So I think it's a priority. It should be a priority for us moving forward, especially recognizing that our kids have been going through so many lockdowns and all of these things that are affecting them on a daily basis. I think it's important for our leadership to prioritize this moving forward, to make sure that we are really understanding what all of our students are feeling in the classroom.
I'd like to add too, and I made comment about it, and using this data to really influence and really take the time to assess the activities that are already taking place. We have things like crew. Well, we put together crew to give our kids an opportunity to come together, really revisiting, is that effective? Is that something that we could continue in a different way? I'm not saying that that's something that needs to change. I'm just saying that's one activity that was set in place to address kids to feel like they could get a better connection in the morning before they start their day. Well, if we're seeing that may not be transcending into how they're feeling, then maybe we need to look at some of those activities. Because one of the things that I would hate to see us do is the same thing year after year without having any different results, and really having an outcome that is reflective of what we want to see.
Yeah, I think that it would be really good to have a metric of, especially within the grades where it is useful and where it maybe is causing more of a strain than being a helpful resource. Director Kuhlenberg wanted me to ask if we always do this survey in December or if it was done at different times this year.
I believe it is typically done in December. But I believe it's typically done December always.
And I would just like to echo what Director Stepp said is the importance of us looking at school belonging and seeing what we need to do, because that is probably our number one thing that we would want for our students to have that sense of belonging and to feel safe and secure in their location. And if that is not being done, then we do need to see what kind of steps we can do to help that move along.
And Chief Park, if you guys can go through the graphic just to make sure that the math is mathing.
Yeah, I did get confirmation that math is mathing because the top question, there's one question, there's a specific question that I named overall, how much you feel like you belong in your school, which is one question. School belonging is a whole category. And it does have multiple questions within that category. And that is the average of the favorable responses in that category.
Go ahead.
I mean, this is going to be part of our strategic planning process. I think there's a bigger question here that yes, it's up to the school leadership and the teachers. And I think they go above and beyond to try to support our students. But speaking of a parent of a teenager, they're just disengaged, from school. It's like, why do we have to do this? What, it's always back to the why. And so addressing these more societal issues is, yes, as a school district, we have to address it. But I think it's bigger than just the survey or just what our faculty and staff can do. And how do we help give them the support tools to help move the needle? It's a huge discussion. So.
Thank you,
Look it
Chief Park.
Thank you.
Chief Director.
Can I make one more comment?
Oh, sure.
It is something, that school belonging, students feeling safe is something that has been embedded in our schools plans, especially coming out of the pandemic. There were, when we look more closely at the responses, more of the responses that had previously been favorable, or at least in grades, were in the neutral, which unfortunately doesn't count. That's not the case for every single time, but that was something that was interesting. And we did think really closely about the factors there. And so just wanted to name that when we looked closer and agree that it is where we do want students to feel safe and a sense of belonging. And on the day that this survey was given in December, I actually distinctly remember certain things happening where even some school leaders were like, oh my gosh, this big serious thing happened and we have to give our student survey. And I said, just give it and we'll know, there's contextual factors there, but you need to still give it. So thank you. It is something that's very important to us all at the district.
Thank you. At this time, we welcome members of the public who have signed up to address the board. There are 14 speakers signed up tonight. The board allots 45 minutes for public comment. To respect the time of all who are present, speakers are to limit their remarks to 3 minutes or less. Reminder to all speakers to uphold our procedures for public comment. We ask you to be thoughtful and constructive with your comments, and thank you in advance for sharing your feedback. Members of the public who wish to share their views with the board may always do so in writing at any time. For this evening's public comment, we received almost 30 written comments. I'm going to ask for all those who signed up to please provide your first and last name for the record. Our first speaker is Gracie Villalta.
Good evening, Superintendent and members of the Roaring Fork District. My name is Gracie Villalta. I'm a junior at Glenwood Springs High School, and I'm here to talk about Border Patrol at the Career Expo on March 19th, 2023 at Glenwood Springs High School. The problem I have with this is that in consideration and ignorance of 60% of Latino students, which makes up your district, the fact that 60% of your students are feeling unsafe and protected and unwelcomed and unseen in your schools is a problem, because your job is to keep us all safe. So you disappointed 60% of those students, and I believe there's a change that needs to be made. I myself and other Latino students feel unsafe and not considered when the board members and others who approved of the presence of the Border Patrol to be at our school. We felt unseen, and we want to change to be more considered when making other decisions and making sure that all 60% or all 100% of students feel safe. The fact that the majority of Roaring Fork District students are Latinos is a problem, because which means that most students did not feel safe during this Career Expo, because Basalt and Roaring Fork were also present at this event. That's it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Monica Quevedo.
Good evening. My name is Monica Quevedo. I'm an alumni of Glenwood Springs High School and an executive team member. I'm here tonight to express my frustrations at the lack of thought and concern for our students, specifically our Latinx students. Regarding the Career Expo that took place on March 21st, I'd first like to thank 4/5 of the board for their statement, as well as Superintendent Jesus Rodriguez for his, and eventually the principal of Glenwood Springs High School. I'm calling for a mandatory inherent bias training for all staff and admin, as well as a renewal of the 2016 Safe Haven Resolution. I'm also calling for a diverse advisory committee of students and community members within the Roaring RE1 school district to prevent this from ever happening again. Lastly, I'd like to add the presence of Border Patrol within our schools was a violation of the 2016 Safe Haven Resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Martha?
Hi, my name is Martha Neela. I was a student at Glenwood Springs High School about 3 years ago, and I'm a leader now with the HUA. I do want to clarify that when I was in high school, having Border Patrol in the building was never seen, and I never thought it would happen. It was scary enough and disrespectful enough having students wear Border Patrol hats while they passed the main office, and I saw the main authorities at the school say absolutely nothing. Being a student at that time and seeing that made me feel like I have no support from my supposed leaders of our school. I would like to thank Superintendent Rodriguez, only 4/5 of the members of the board, and most recently, Mr. Freeman, for the apology. Although I do believe if Latino students or parents were involved in the Career Expo, no apology would be needed. It would make it way more obvious why Border Patrol being there was wrong. If GSHS provided more education on not only students, but on the adults as well, you would know and acknowledge that oppression and life experiences within the immigrant community is extremely different for brown immigrants compared to immigrants who come from Europe. I fully understand people have the right to believe whatever they want when it comes to what's morally appropriate in their own lives. But you do not have the right to push that on any students. So considering it took about 2 weeks after the incident for Freeman to apologize and only 4/5 of the board members apologized, I will say this once again, having Border Patrol out of school is extremely irresponsible, uneducated, and wrong. There is no place to gaslight brown students or families when it comes to feeling insulted by the lack of sympathy and or education you guys have for a certain group of people that go to these schools. This is not the time to try to relate to us or Latino students, but now's a good time to enforce more education on each other to understand how this is problematic, as well as to reassure impacted students and families that this will never happen again. It's the time to build new policies and training to assure that the public agreement is followed. This could be very much help you guys with your organization and communication system you guys have between board members, principals, and event holders like Youth into whatever the heck, Career Expo. This will help not only stay away from these types of issues, but also you guys know what's happening and who's entering the schools you guys are responsible for. I understand it's not 2020 anymore and the conversation of racial inequality has died down in schools, but I would like to remind you that the act of it is well alive. Latino voices in the schools all around the valley have always been pushed under the rug, and allowing something like this pushes these voices even deeper. AHUA will never allow for any disrespect to be pushed aside, and we will continue for those who can't. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alan.
Hello, Superintendent and members of the board. My name is Alan Munoz Valenciano. Currently, I'm the Regional Manager of Organizing for Voces Unidas de las Montañas, a nonprofit organization here in our valley. I'm also a member of AHUA, Asociación de Jóvenes Unidos en Acción, a youth-led organization that was founded in the Roaring Fork School District over 10 years ago now. But most importantly, I am someone who has DACA and who grew up and went to school in this valley. And today, I want to share that from my perspective, allowing Border Patrol not only to be present, but to be invited to a career expo in Glenwood Springs High School is reckless, irresponsible, and outright dangerous. We have members of our community who are undocumented. We have students in the Roaring Fork School District who are undocumented. And there are families that have lived through traumatic experiences at the hands of federal immigration agencies. To ensure that our schools are safe for all students, if we do not have the forethought to realize that Border Patrol possesses a symbol of intimidation for many students and our members of our community, we can't keep our students safe. I stand here today to let you know that we need better for our students. Our community is calling for Superintendent Rodriguez and members of the board to commit to 5 things. 1, we need the superintendent, the board, and the principal of Glenwood Springs High School to take accountability and apologize. I do want to note that we have heard apologies from Superintendent Rodriguez, 4/5 of the school board, and most recently Principal Freeman. But I also want to note that it took Principal Freeman almost 2 weeks after the incident to apologize, and we have yet to hear from Board Member Maureen Stepp. 2, the board needs to codify the principles from the Safe Haven resolution from December of 2016 to prevent any further confusion and further clarify that the district will not invite any federal immigration agency to any campus unless compelled by court order. 3, the board needs to approve any additional regulations to hold schools and third-party organizations like Youth Entity that partner with the school district accountable for violations of the Safe Haven provisions. 4, provide additional training to all school district staff on existing and new policies related to the Safe Haven provisions. And 5, the superintendent needs to create and convene an ad hoc advisory committee made up of impacted students, parents, and community members to advise the superintendent on additional steps needed to reassure to the community that this will never happen again. Real damage was caused by this incident, so don't let others try to mitigate the severity of what this caused. Do not gaslight students or families who were impacted by this and make less of how they felt and how this incident made them feel. And finally, we don't need to toughen up our students. We need to teach empathy. It's already tough enough growing up brown and undocumented in this valley, so don't make it harder by allowing things like this to happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Maribel. Our next speaker is Janie Nims.
Hello, everybody. I've come here this evening to speak a little bit about educational leadership. I stand before the board this evening as a parent of two children at Crystal River Elementary School, the husband of a committed teacher, ELD teacher at CRES, and as the head of school of Two Rivers Community School, your most recent addition to the portfolio. My decision to speak here this evening certainly did not come easy. I've spent the last handful of hours stressing about what, if anything, I should try to say to this board right now. But I'm here tonight because I love this community. I love this school district, and I want nothing but the best for our teachers, for our staff, for our students. And I'm worried. I'm afraid that recent decisions that have been made by this district have led to the erosion of trust in this community. I think that we're at a critical point where we need to address some of the things that have happened, and that we need to restore the relationship between this district and the greater community, because I see this as the most important organization in this community. The success of Roaring Fork Schools is paramount to the success and to the health of our greater community as a whole. And at the foundation of all of that is healthy relationships. I think that this district has misfired in its handling of many relationships recently. And I think it's critical that we identify just how important this is to this work. Whether it's a teacher getting to know their students, a principal getting to know their parents, their team members, their staff members, or this board communicating with openly and honestly with its constituents, and listening and sharing openly and honestly with its constituents. Nothing will be done until we come to the place where we have healthy relationships across this district. Open communication is a must. When I left this board room on the 22nd of March, I felt like this board had understood that. I felt like there was some open and honest communication between the board and its constituents. And I had expectations that we were going to arrive maybe to a turning point in what I'd seen as a decline in the health and culture of our district. I'm here tonight because I'm not sure that we've yet arrived to that place. And as much as it pains me to sit here and speak publicly, I think that it needs to be said. I hope and I urge and I implore everyone on this board and in this district to reassess priorities and to recommit to open and honest communication and clear communication between yourselves and between your constituents. The last thing that we need are greater distractions from the important work that lies ahead for all of us. We've all signed up and committed to doing critically important work here in this district.
I'm sorry, Mr. Nems, your time is up. Please wrap up your comment.
Yes, for our leaders, for our teachers, for our staff, for our students, please, let's work together. Let's pick up the pieces and let's repair the damage that's been done.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christopher Menjivar.
Hello, Superintendent and board members. My name is Christopher Menjivar Cornejo, and I'm a junior at GSHS. And I'm here to talk about the Border Patrol being at our school at the Career Expo. This event is meant to be an opportunity for students to find jobs, find career paths, and inviting Border Patrol is a direct, and it felt targeted towards the community and felt targeted in trying to make us feel unsafe. You are so concerned with making us feel welcome in the school and making us feel a part of the school, but you blatantly ignore the community and you invite people who we see as the enemy. Families have been broken apart and you blatantly ignore the families. Future generations, my little brother, he's going to this school. I don't want him to feel like he is unwelcome in this place. The school is meant to be a place of trust, a place of opportunity, and ignoring us and ignoring the community is ignorant and it's insensitive to all of us. We are the community, and to ignore us is wrong on your part and insensitive on your part. And I ask not for an apology, but ask for change. I ask for you to act now, because this is not a one-time thing. This isn't the first time this has happened. This is a catalyst to all of what has happened to us as a community. And it is the final straw. We need change now, and we need to act now. It's your job to make us feel safe and to make us feel welcomed. Yet you aren't doing your job. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rachel Hahn.
Hi, I'm Rachel Hahn. So I am just here to say thank you. As most of you know, I've been following this district since Happenstall was voted out, and then followed the search for a new superintendent and all the craziness with the Stein versus Serco situation and the underlying agendas from folks back then. I've attended many board meetings over the years and spoken at them. I know there are a lot of folks out there who react emotionally to situations or have an undermining agenda because of a loyalty to prior administrations, and do not actually take the time to research things and ask questions of you, and therefore do not approach you with facts, if they approach you at all, because of course it's much easier to be an armchair warrior and chirp away promoting false information. I do know this board has been very open and forthcoming with information whenever I have reached out. Catherine and Jasmine have both told me that they want people to hold them accountable, that you guys want people to hold you accountable. This is a far cry from the previous board and administration, I can assure you. So thank you all for being open, approachable, and transparent. What many folks don't realize is that you inherited a huge mess from the prior group, and many of the issues that are happening today are because of the dysfunctional culture you were left with that are all coming to light now after being hidden by the prior group. This district was not in compliance with many state standards. And yes, I did do my research on that. While I don't always agree with some of the decisions of the board, as most of you know, I do recognize how challenging it is to navigate so many different groups and opinions in this community, especially when so many of the opinions are based on emotions, undermining agendas, and rumors. So I just wanted to say thank you again for hanging tough, and especially to Maureen, Jasmine, and Natalie, who not only have had to navigate COVID, but also had to search for a new superintendent on a very short timeline, to now navigating breaking down a dysfunctional organizational structure that was inherited. Please know your efforts do not go unnoticed by the few of us who have paid attention over the years and reached out to you and asked questions to deal with facts and not rumors and underlying agendas. So I'll close with the words of Brené Brown, as I think it's a little apropos here. If you are not in the arena getting your ass kicked on occasion, I am not interested in or open to your feedback. There are a million cheap seats in the world today filled with people who will never be brave with their own lives, but will spend every ounce of energy they have hurling advice and judgment at those of us trying to dare greatly. Their only contributions are criticism, cynicism, and fear mongering. If you're criticizing from a place where you're not also putting yourself on the line, I'm not interested in your feedback. So thank you for being in the arena, trying to dare greatly.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jean.
Do I say?
No.
Oh, okay. Try to be a little louder than last time. All right. Thank you, President Kuhlenberg and directors, for listening. My name is Jean Lakin. I speak on behalf of myself today to provide a lens on equity, calling in accountability and transparency. Many things can be true all at the same time. So I would like to ground my comment today in these words by 13th century scholar and poet Jalal al-Din Muhammad Rumi. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. I want to share a cherished moment. I had asked a parent if they'd been trying anything new at home lately because their child had been showing double their engagement and growth at an unusual point in the school year. I wanted to know where this magic was coming from in case I could amplify the positive impact at school. This parent kindly explained that there had been nothing new. Instead, they said it was because I had told their child about college. I thought it had just been once or twice, but I later realized I talk about my students' capacity to take up space in this world as much as I can. They have heard about graduates from our community that overcome challenges, about all kinds of people and paths you can take in this world. They hear you are an artist, you are a scientist. If you wanted, you would be a great teacher, even better than me. Not because third graders already know everything, but because they are curious, trying their best and making progress. To paraphrase Tufts professor of Latinx studies, Lorgia Garcia Peña, to be a community, we must entrust our hearts to others. It is a risk, but a risk worth taking. In her book, Community as Rebellion, she writes, teaching in freedom is to be cognizant that there is a greater goal that connects us beyond our fields, departments, and individual responsibilities. Justice and equity for all human beings. It is to recognize that learning is a communal practice, or as Bell Hooks taught us, that learning in community is a practice of love. I'm here to tell you, you are capable. You can do this. The work of transforming education into something systematically better, something grounded deeply in community, can be risky, painful work. It requires grappling with complexity and contradictions. It requires thinking in ways we haven't done, not just about practical solutions, big and small. May I ask about 10 more seconds of your time? Thank you. Big and small, but also about our own capacity, our ability to find ourselves in each other. This is work that writer Rennie Edo-Lodge reminds us will never be done. It means going beyond wrongdoing and right doing. It means meeting in a field. And if you are willing, I will meet you there too. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alex Sanchez. Our next speaker is Joe Kalin.
Thank you, members of the board and the public for being here, and of course, district leadership as well. I absolutely agree. The Border Patrol career fair incident was not handled correctly at all. We do need productive solutions to build trust in this community. But what are those solutions? 10,000 and 62,000. That's the approximate number of Hispanic Border Patrol agents in 2017 and the average starting salary of a Border Patrol agent, 70,000. That's the number of fentanyl deaths in the United States in 2021. Make no mistake, we would be denying the opportunity for a good employer who saves tens of thousands of lives to recruit our students. If students feel that the 51% plus Hispanic Border Patrol are the enemy, we need to do something about that. Look, it used to be a virtue to understand two sides of an argument, but we've seemed to have lost that as a greater society, and I'm as guilty of that as anyone else. I'll be candid. When I first heard about the apology, my initial reaction was frustration and disbelief that we turn away an employer of good jobs and folks who serve their country and save lives. But then listening to the testimony tonight and talking to neighbors and friends, I realized there are very good reasons why many students legitimately would not feel safe around Border Patrol agents. And I agree with them. We heard powerful testimony on that tonight. As F. Scott Fitzgerald said, holding two opposing ideas in the mind at the same time is no easy feat for any of us. To be clear, I'm not here to advocate that we continue to invite the Border Patrol to career expos in the same fashion. I believe that's been made very clear. There was undoubtedly very poor judgment occurring, such as having students try on Border Patrol vests just blows my mind, candidly, as well as the lack of notice to the community. I am, however, advocating that our leaders be leaders. Please bring people together in how we address issues such as this. Turn down the temperature, work on solutions so that we can focus on educating our students. I'd recommend asking some of our students even here for ideas. Those vulnerable, as well as those interested in law enforcement, bring them together, have them organize a structured debate. We still have debate clubs. Acknowledging that there are two sides of an issue, each with valid points, is a good thing. It does not mean the two sides are equal. It doesn't even mean the wrong decision that was made or was not made. However, demanding apologies and mandatory re-education divides us further and destroys trust. The apology email, while necessary, did come across as very one-sided. There was no evidence that the Border Patrol was spoken to or offered any assurances before or after the event around Safe Haven. And I would hope somebody had asked them if they would abide by Safe Haven before they came. There was no mention that they weren't there for enforcement activities. There was no acknowledgement that there was any benefit to having them there, such as the employment statistics. The Safe Haven resolution should be the start of the conversation and a core principle for this district. It should not be the end of the conversation. Why weren't we trying to turn down the temperature? To use a baseball term, oh, I'm sorry.
You could just wrap up here.
Absolutely. I just suspect on the board with all these various issues happening on, we might be having a little bit too much groupthink. Let's just make sure to listen to voices that disagree with us, and let's partner with educators, parents, and community, especially with those who disagree with us. We have a lot of challenges and opportunities ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lori. Lori, can you come up first, so then we'll go back to Alex. Can you have? He's up. Okay, sorry, Lori. He's ready.
Are you ready for me?
Yes, Alex.
Okay. Hello, I'm Alex Sanchez. Thank you for this opportunity to address the board. And thank you for your service. I know that as an elected official, you are an elected volunteer. So we're grateful again for your service. I'm sorry I could not be there with you in person. I'm in our nation's capital today to share with whomever will listen here in Washington, D.C. what is happening to Latinos in the Roaring Fork Valley, and specifically what's happening to Latino students in the Roaring Fork School District. I hope you have also had a chance to read and see and hear the many insensitive statements that some actually teachers of our own school district and members of the public, including some elected officials who may not understand why having the Border Patrol in a school, in a public school, is a big deal. We have, as an organization, we have read them, we have heard them, and we have seen them. Perhaps those individuals have never experienced extreme poverty that forces a human to abandon their own home country and risk their lives in hopes of finding freedom, opportunity, and dignity. Maybe some of them have never had a member of their family taken away in the darkness of night or rounded up after work, leaving children at home alone without a parent after a deportation raid. Unfortunately, too many in our community have here in the Roaring Fork Valley. Many of us have personal experiences with immigration enforcement agencies. As an organization, we're the first ones to get the calls from members of our community every time ICE is suspected to be doing raids or an unmarked federal law enforcement vehicle is spotted somewhere up and down, Highway 82. We deal with these fears on a regular basis, unfortunately. And as you know, our community takes these incidents when an immigration enforcement agency comes to our town very seriously, and the presence in a school is even more alarming. So thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, for being a leader and immediately apologizing, even though you were not directly involved in the planning of the expo, but it happened on your watch. But that is what we expect from leaders, to take responsibility, to develop a plan to heal and move forward. And thank you to the 4 out of the 5 school board members for also apologizing and recognizing the impact that these incidents have on an immigrant community. This is what we expect from you as elected leaders. You are either with your Latino students or you are against your Latino students. And we will always remember and never forget what side of this issue you are on. Thank you also to Principal Freeman for recognizing and eventually apologizing. Even like Dr. Rodriguez, he too was not directly involved in the planning, but it happened on his watch and on his campus. And this is part of being a leader. We hope that the principal continues to work with families, the young people in the audience, as well as students on his campus to find ways to heal and move forward as a community. I won't repeat what has already been said by many young leaders in the community, as well as my colleague about our organization and the demands that we have made to the Roaring Fork School District, but I encourage you to work with us as you consider each one of them. Lastly, it is clear to me and to us as a community, the school district and the Roaring Fork school system has been distracted for far too long by too many adult issues and not student achievement. In case you did not know, Latino students are on average academically 2.8 grades behind their white peers, and Latino students still face an achievement gap as high as 40% in our school system. You should expect Voces Unidas to remain engaged and hold school staff and the school board accountable for ensuring that every student, not just some, get a quality education. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Good evening, board and district leadership. I so appreciate all of you. My name is Lori Knaus. I am the student registrar at Roaring Fork High School and a parent of a sophomore. I want to start by saying that I echo the sentiments of Mr. Nims, who is far more eloquent than I could ever be in his appreciations and his messaging around communication. I'm grateful to his statement tonight because I fear that mine comes from a more frustrated place. I've invested time in speaking with several of you and asking questions over the last month and a half. And the fact that things have been omitted from our conversations, you have not been transparent, disturbs me greatly. At no point over the last month and a half have any of you directly addressed the document that was signed by board members and our superintendent outlining an agreement around housing. Not pointing to this, omitting the existence of this document feels completely dishonest. You've had numerous opportunities to bring it up, the last of which was the town hall meeting. We sat in an awkward format and waited for answers. And at no point was this document referenced. So it gives me pause because I want what's best in this community and I want success for the people across the table from me, the people sitting here and the people behind me, and most importantly, the students. But if we are to move forward and do the tough work and make the tough decisions, and you have not started out by being transparent about some of these other things, how can we move forward and be productive in a housing conversation that could potentially involve $500,000? It makes me sad for you as a board because it didn't have to be this way. If we had been alerted to this agreement that was signed far early on, I'm imagining there's no date on this document, but there is a deadline for this document that you all hoped that you would come to some sort of agreement by the end of the summer of 2022. So that's been 8+ months that this document is sitting out somewhere and none of us knows to ask about it. And Director Cullenberg can talk circles around whether or not we've asked appropriately for it or not, or it's been housed elsewhere and this, that, and the other thing. But the fact is I have sat and I've talked with you and you've not brought it up. The feeling in the community right now is that you chose not to involve your stakeholders and you continue to make your first and only obligation to the superintendent. And I urge and implore you to pivot.
Our next speaker is Dolores.
Hola, mi nombre es Dolores Figueroa. Estoy aquí pidiendo justicia. Mi hija, que está en la middle school de Carbondale, fue víctima de violencia a principios de año. No recibía ayuda. Sí, por favor. Sí. Mi nombre es Dolores Figueroa.
My name is Dolores Figueroa.
Mi hija fue víctima de violencia en la escuela Carbondale Middle School.
My daughter was a victim of violence in middle school campus.
No recibimos ninguna ayuda, ni del distrito,
We never got
ni
any
de la policía, ni de nadie.
or the police or no one.
Mi hija hasta el día de hoy no quiere ir a la escuela porque se siente intimidada por su agresor.
My daughter doesn't want to assist school because she feels intimidated by the other.
Ya no sé a dónde acudir,
No
ni,
idea where
ni quién me pueda ayudar en todo este proceso.
who could help me through
Ha
this.
sido duro, difícil para mí en lo personal, en la salud
Personally,
y en todo momento. Entonces, estoy aquí buscando justicia para mi hija.
and I am here asking for justice for my daughter.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Our next speaker is Sean Nesbitt.
Good evening. My name is Sean Nesbitt. My son is a junior at Glenwood Springs High School. And for the past 5 years, I've served on the advisory board for the school district's Family Resource Center. I'm also a mentor to the school district's pre-collegiate program. Gracie, the first speaker, is one of my students. I'm very proud of her for speaking up tonight. I've always been impressed with the staff of these two programs and I'm honored to support them in any way I can. I'm here tonight because in the 6 years we have lived in the Valley, I've become friends with many people who work for the school district, and I am seeing their morale greatly decline. This is due to many factors. Lack of trust and support from the administration, district office, and the Board of Education, uncivil experiences with both parents and students alike. These issues are not isolated to our school district. We see these stories across the country every day. COVID really brought out the best in all of us. It suddenly seemed to become okay to treat others with disrespect. I've actually heard a parent say to an administrator, "I'm sorry, but I'm just passionate about my kids," as if that makes it okay to be disrespectful to a teacher. I always hoped that the community I lived in, raised my son could be more than and be above that discord. All the issues being discussed tonight are valid concerns, and our community looks to the Board of Education to represent our best values. How we get through these discussions is very important, and I hope we can all be open to listening to both sides of an issue. To that point, I want to read to all who are listening tonight what the commitments of the district are in the school district strategic plan. Due to the time limit, I am only going to focus on one section. Our district will provide teachers and schools the tools, resources, and services they need for all students to succeed. Establish clear definitions for success on a broad set of indicators, set ambitious goals, and manage toward their attainment. Communicate transparently our successes and challenges to others in the district and the broader community, and provide opportunities for others to communicate with us. Foster a culture of trust and respect among all stakeholders. Create an atmosphere of high quality customer service and create an exceptional environment in which to work and to go to school. I feel the community believes that the culture of trust and respect among all stakeholders has eroded over the past few months. I also feel that your teachers and staff do not feel it is always an exceptional environment in which to work and go to school. I look to the board to listen closely to all staff, whether they be teachers, administrators, custodians, bus drivers, or social workers. Ask them for their perspectives, listen to them, and what we can do to better support them. Unfortunately, all I have heard from my friends and family and acquaintances is that they're not being supported right now, and it's definitely a lack of trust that the leadership of the school district is looking out for the best interests of our community.
Thank you. We added a 5-minute break after the end of public comment. So I will take a motion to take it down into.
I move to put us in a 5-minute break, move us to a 5-minute break.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you to all of our speakers tonight.
All right. Might go to the bathroom.
Okay. We are going to resume. Everyone is welcome to stay or take conversations into the hallway. The next business in order is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes routine personnel and the minutes from our previous two board meetings. Directors, are there any items that you would like to pull out of the consent agenda for a separate discussion and vote?
No.
Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
A second.
Call to vote.
Director Tyler,
Aye.
Director Step,
Aye.
Director Ramirez,
Aye.
Director Torres,
Aye.
Director Kuhlenberger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. The next business in order is discussion on housing for the superintendent role and an update on the task force. Guess we'll just start with comments. We have had, I believe today, 14, 15 people sign up for the housing task force. And we have also made contact with the housing committee. So there is a meeting happening on the 18th. I believe Director Tytler and Director Torres will be attending that meeting of the housing committee and bringing some feedback back to the board. We also want to encourage everyone who has not signed up to be part of the task force to please sign up. The sign up will close this Friday. I'm gonna Director Torres, do you want to?
No, I think you mentioned we made a public commitment that we were going to reach out and meet with that housing committee. And then obviously we will have that feedback to take to the housing task force. And then we will be bringing it back to have in a more public space. So stay tuned for more, I guess.
Kelsey, is Director Kuhlenberg available?
Director Kuhlenberg.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Director Ramirez and Director Torres for providing an update. I think that we are, eager to get feedback from the housing committee and to bring that to the larger task force and to hopefully convene the task force in the near future with the hope of having some solutions-based conversations around this issue. I'm appreciative of all the work that everyone has done so far and the constructive feedback that we've received from the community. And we look forward to continuing to engage.
Thank you, Director Tytler.
Just want to add that our hope in meeting with the housing committee is for us to be able to share information and gather information from them to be able to bring to the task force.
I think a question that has come up is what is the difference between the housing committee and the housing task force? So the housing committee has been meeting for several years since the bond was passed, and they create the policies around the rental program for all of the district-owned rental properties. And several of those members have signed up to be on the task force. And this task force is specifically looking at what possible programs can be implemented for both the superintendent and administration, teachers, staff, everyone else. So, and that program is more along the lines of home ownership versus rental. So the two may merge in the future. It could be two completely separate, different conversations. But that's why we're meeting with them next week to start those conversations. And the conversations around housing for the superintendent and a housing program, home ownership program for other staff and faculty are parallel, but they're not the same conversation. So I appreciate everybody reaching out and talking about this. And I think the way that this came out may not have been the best, but this is our transparency. We're asking for feedback. We're asking for input. We haven't made a decision. So it's open, and please join in and we'll figure this out together.
Thank you. And I guess just to clarify, what we want to ensure is that the task force is separate. It is for the superintendent role. And then the housing committee currently serves for the housing units that we have for teachers. And obviously we are open to communication and discussion. We hope more than anything that the task force, that we continue to get people to sign up, including students. We want to make sure that all stakeholders are involved in that conversation. And so we would encourage you guys to please continue to share with community that the task force forum is still live until Friday, and that we want more people to sign up.
And along with that, we have, I know, at least one housing committee member who has signed up for the task force, but if there are any other housing committee members who would like to be part of that task force, to please make sure that happens too before Friday. I believe one member. I could be wrong, but I think that's where we're at.
All right. The next business in order is the quarterly financial review. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions.
Is Nathan presenting or?
Is he going to present to us?
But he's available to answer questions.
Questions, sorry. Get to my. Go to the next person while I get myself.
Director Tytler?
I had a few questions, please, Chief Markham. My first one is that on the quarterly financial summary food service fund, my question is, why is there a loss of $176,000? And is this maybe due to the loss of federal funding? That would be my guess, but I'm not certain where that deficit comes from.
Hold on here. Sorry, Director Tyler, you're asking why is there a loss of
$176,000 in the quarterly financial summary for food service fund?
So that's actually for the prior fiscal year, Director Tyler. The year-to-date loss is about $46,000 on the year-to-date actual column of the FY 22-23 year-to-date financials. You can see that expenses through the first 6 months were higher. Part of that's from the MLO. We increased wages substantially, particularly for, I think our food service workers were our lowest paid employees a year prior. And they're no longer the lowest paid. I think they received percentage raises that were the highest in the district. As I mentioned in the memo, the very high fund balance in the food service account allows us to outspend currently. And historically, there's always been a subsidy from the general fund to the food service fund, which we're not having to make right now because of the strong performance over the last couple of years.
Thank you. My next question is on the quarterly financial summary capital reserve, capital projects fund. And I was curious of why the allocation number was so far off. And is this due to Meadowood or is there another reason?
The allocation is just the amount that needs to balance to zero for income loss for the year. So basically it's set to match expenses until the end of the year.
Can you explain that a little bit more, please?
Yeah, so for instance, on the year-to-date actual, total expenditures were $1.574 million. We had local revenue of 703. The difference that we put to allocations basically makes that income loss on the bottom line zero. So as we spend more money, we'll transfer more money to match revenues and expenditures.
Okay, I'll still need to look that over. I don't quite understand, but I can have a future conversation with you on that. My last question is if you could describe in a little bit more detail the investments table and especially what demand deposits and U.S. government obligations mean.
So demand deposits would be like a checking account. So we have a general fund checking account and a payroll checking account that we pay expenditures out of on a weekly basis. U.S. government deposits would be like our investment account where we have balances that are in excess of what we think we're going to need for the current month. And that is invested at a higher long-term rate. We redeem money from that investment account when we need to fund the checking account.
Thank you.
Director Stepp?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Director Kuhlenberg?
Hi. So first, I just wanted to share with the board, I'm not sure if everybody received this or just me, and applaud Chief Markham. The CDE reviewed our financial audit and there were no findings reported. So thank you, Chief Markham, for the work on that and your team for the work on that. Just want to take a second there. My only question is, obviously there are some quarterly overages in the financials and pupil services, I think is the highest. And just curious if you anticipate that over the year that we will still be over in that budgeted item or if that's going to even out over the next 2 quarters.
Yeah, so I was looking at the people services for the quarter. It looks like there's some expenses that we need to move to grant funded accounts that the accounting hasn't been, or the funding routine on the back end hasn't been set up. So it's something I need to dig into further with the accounting staff just to make sure we get that right. We're also carrying 1 extra nurse currently, which we're going to apply to have paid for with ESSER.
Great, thank you. I don't have any other questions on this right now. Thank you.
Director Torres?
Yes, thank you. So in looking at the capital projects fund, and it just mentions, obviously there's a little bit higher of an expense of the 120,000 that was not in the original budget. I know that we had approved to move some funding to cover the staff housing. Will we just get, as obviously I know that's always in flux, like if there's changes in construction costs, is that to date, like, do we expect more of this shortage or where we're at with that projection that was not in the original budget, like
Yeah, so the
what could we
numbers,
expect?
numbers reflected here,
Yes.
Director Torres, are through December 31st, and you made that adjustment after that, so that will show up in the next quarterly report. Where we moved money specific to Meadowwood. But we had incurred expense through December for Meadowwood that we hadn't appropriated money to this fund for. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Chief Markham, I just wanted to ask, and I'm sorry if this has already been asked, but on the expenditures, the professional services on the 5th page.
Which fund,
I
excuse
just
me?
was wondering on the 2nd quarter and the year to date, you highlighted it in red. Can you just talk a little bit about that line item and what the professional services are?
The 5th page.
I think it's the food services fund, Nathan, under expenditures. Professional services, we have 119% used.
I'd have to dig into that. I'll admit, when I saw it was $2,500 out of a $2 million budget, I didn't think much of it. I could look into what that is though.
Okay, thank you. Chief Markham, is there anything on this quarterly financial statement that you think is important for us as board members to know?
I think, the most important thing for me is, we seem to be operating smoothly. I mean, there's line items that are over and there's line items that under. On the whole, the general fund is currently underspent. Looking forward, as I mentioned in the memo, we'll do retroactive pay raises for the entire staff in the 4th quarter, and that will likely catch us up for the full year. Our projections, I still think will come in under budget for the year.
Thank you. Directors, we will now have 5 minutes for open discussion.
So I did have a question. So in reference to what Nathan just said in regards to being under budget and then going retroactively back to see what can be made up. I know IBB had recently passed, having additional funding for added duties. Just curious if we see that cost savings really being allocated to those extra duties that right now I know that teachers just do. They take on extra lunchtime duties or they take on extra coverage. If that seems to be a place in which we would have savings that we want to make sure to account for in the future.
So the extra duty pay schedule was put into place for next year, and the teachers funded that with funds they would be allocated through the IBB process. So that will be in next year's budget.
Just maybe, just an idea as far as looking back to be seeing what extra, I know teachers might be going through a meeting right now.
And I wanted to also mention that Chief Markham and Director Kuhlenberg today are at a training. So thank you guys for doing your education finance training. I think it's super important, especially as we continue to talk about important issues like our budget. But I would just want to echo Director Kuhlenberg's comments on us being able to have a clean audit. Always feels good.
The only thing I would like to add to this discussion is I would appreciate if maybe in a future work session or next time that we're given the quarterly financials, that maybe we could have a little bit more of a background talk from Chief Markham about the line items, which still are a little bit hard for me to understand and really grasp it just by looking at it. So if I could have a little better understanding and maybe have some education about each of those pages, that would be helpful to me.
I do have a question for you, Chief Markham. Sometimes after we get the property tax evaluations or something that the state has changed, usually around this time of year in April or May, we do an amended budget. Do you foresee that any need for us to vote on an amended budget this year? Or is it looking good the way it stands?
We had passed an amended budget, I think, at the previous board meeting.
Do you foresee that our capital funding budget and our reserve funds are adequate for covering all the needs that may or may not arise?
Yes, I believe the capital projects fund budget is adequate for this year, and we'll revise looking forward to next year.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
No.
Thank you, Chief Markham. The next business in order is discussion on 3 budget-related policies. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions. Chief Markham.
Are we starting on policy DEA?
Okay, there isn't a presentation for this item either. We are gonna move into Director Taylor.
Chief Markham, I have a question about DEA, funds from local tax sources. There is a line in there that says, beginning in the 2019-2020 fiscal year, additional mill levy revenue shall be distributed to the district's charter schools and innovation schools in accordance with the charter school contract adopted by the board. My question is, do these funds go to that charter school if they're only a district charter school? Because of how we are saving those funds that could be applied to Ross Montessori is my understanding, if they were to become a district school, that we have funds for them. But is it necessary for them then to be a district charter in order to receive those funds?
Yes, they would need to be a district authorized charter rather than a CSI chartered school in order to receive those funds.
Okay, thank you. My next question was on DFAA. It said that there's a line in there that says the intent of the district is to support financial institutions located within the district boundaries. And so are we investing locally in that way?
So our primary checking account is with Bank of Colorado, who has several locations in the district. Our representatives with Bank of Colorado are local, based out of Glenwood. We also have, all of our schools have accounts with Alpine Bank as well as our food service fund. So we probably have, I would say, in excess of $1 million at Alpine Bank. And then in order to meet, we're restricted by state statute on what we can invest in. So there are several companies, investment firms set up that do that work for you. So we invest in government securities through Colo Trust. They make sure that what we're invested in meets state statute, which is essentially for us, we're invested in US government securities.
Okay, thank you.
Director Stepp.
Yeah, on that same policy DFA, right below that paragraph you were just talking about, it says delegation of authority. So in the paragraph above, it says chief financial officer or other administrator appointed by the board. And in that delegation of authority, it says the responsibility of the investment program is hereby delegated to the superintendent and his or her designee, the chief financial officer. And I'm just curious why it doesn't say or other administrator appointed by the board. Like this just seems a little off between those two paragraphs. Like, is the investment program only the superintendent and CFO?
No, I think it could be any person I would designate, but in most cases it would be the CFO.
I'm assuming that, but
Yeah.
that's not what it says. It
Yeah.
says the superintendent and designee, the
Yeah.
CFO.
Mhm.
So I
think
don't
I
know.
would
if
ask
we
that be
have to say
changed to
the
the
CFO
same-
or other administrator.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that recommendation comes from 5 years ago. So we could-
And actually, I think under delegation of authority, I'd strike the chief financial officer, those last four, and just leave it as his or her designee. Because I think prior to me, the title was actually assistant superintendent.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman. Director Kulenberg?
I don't have any further questions or comments on these policies. I think they were all addressed and resolved. Thanks.
Director Torres?
I do not have any additional questions.
I also don't have any additional questions. So we will now have 5 minutes for open discussion. Anyone have any extra comments or concerns, questions? Chief Mark?
I just appreciate Chief Markham and his team for tackling these 30-year-old policies.
Nothing further.
I guess I would just add that I truly appreciate our team's commitment to ensure that, as obviously we do have all of these per CASB recommendation additions, and I know I've stressed to the team that I really want us to make sure that these policies are cured for our district and our needs. And so I appreciate Chief Markup's commitment to make sure that not only are we updating them, but that we're ensuring that they work for us. So. Okay. The next business in order is discussion on 3 health-related policies. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions. And we will start with Director Stepp.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Director Kulenberg?
I also don't have anything further to clarify. We did talk through a lot of these changes that you see in these policies through policy committee. And thank you to Chief Cole for getting feedback and input from staff that are directly related in these ways. And so I think all of my questions have been addressed. So thanks.
Director Torres.
I was curious in relation to policy JLCDA, students with food allergies, the reasonable accommodations section, and then it was added that our schools cannot affirm allergen-free environments. If that, perhaps even specifically that section is given to parents, just as an awareness that obviously every step within their control can be taken, but just to have that awareness. I just wasn't sure if that's something that parents are made aware of as a part of this. I see that last sentence was added.
You know, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think we have like a general handout that would go to parents. A lot of this is negotiated between the school nurse and the parent as they're working through the like health plans and the protocols. But yeah, your recommendation and concern, I think, is similar to the health services team, which is trying to manage expectations, right? And saying that like we're not going to be able to be peanut free schools. So yeah, definitely hear that. I think you're sharing our team's kind of concerns about that. So can certainly dig in a little bit with how we're, almost more on the regulation side. Like the policy says this, what does the regulation look like? What do the communications look like when we're working through those health plans?
Thank you.
Director Chaitley.
Yes, Chief Cole, I do have one question on JLCE on the first aid and emergency medical care. In that second paragraph, it says during the school day and during school sponsored events, including those off-site, at least one staff person shall be on duty who has a current certification from a nationally recognized course in standard first aid and CPR. So does this like relate to field trips, for example? And I imagine then we haven't been in compliance with that for a long time, maybe, because I know at least in my whole experience going on field trips, we were never asked who is the person that has that.
Right. You're right. I would say in my understanding and working with the school health services team, the nursing team, what we've really prioritized is a medication delegation training. So we've done a really good job ensuring that if there's a kid that gets medication and needs it or might need it on that field trip, that person's been trained by the school nurse. But
Right.
we have not prioritized this statute. And so this is why you'll see that like we didn't have this policy and the health services team wanted it because we felt like we were not meeting the regulations. We wanted the policy to really affirm that so that the team can then build supports. So we follow it.
So what will that look like for teachers? Is there going to be more added to their plate to say, if you want to go on a field trip, one of you has to become first aid certified?
What we're gonna try to do, there's a lot of certifications and mandatory trainings teachers have to do every year. We're going to try to make this as easy as possible for schools to identify within 5th grade teams, 8th grade teams, that there is someone that is first aid certified on those teams. So our nurses are running trainings now. We're going to try to up the level of that so that we have a pretty robust, so it becomes easy for staff to get this certification. We've also on the health services team, recognizing this lift for teachers, talked a lot about opening up those trainings to the parents who often volunteer to go along on trips, or frankly, like folks from central office who often attends field trips, and to get some of those people CPR certified so that it's not necessarily on the teachers, but we have a list of kind of, here's a great group of basalt parents who can go on field trips and are first aid certified. So we're going to try to approach this with as light a touch on teachers as possible because we're really conscious of that impact.
So is this something like that will be starting next year, starting now? When is that in compliance?
Yeah, we're going to try to build up for it. We've communicated once we kind of got clearer on the expectations, have been communicating this to leaders that, hey, this is the expectation. You're out of compliance if you're going on field trips without somebody that's first aid CPR certified. So we've started that work. I think a more robust, what we're seeing for health services is a much more robust calendar with training opportunities. A little bit more streamlined access for those really won't launch until next year, where we're kind of saying we have more resources for you to kind of achieve this goal. We'll really more officially, robustly start where we'll put more pressure on next fall.
So if this is first of 3 readings and it will be then a couple by next month, it will be passed as a rule, as what we're saying our policy is, then starting next month, are people allowed to go on field trips if they don't have this?
That's a great question. My answer to that would be saying the regulation states, and I would explain that to principals, and that's what we've been doing.
And has this been shared with schools at all?
Not the policy per se, but the expectation that our health services team, when we started to really more look into these regulations around medication administration training and CPR, which we've always kind of looked at, but really we prioritize medication administration. When we realized probably more end of the fall that the CPR was more of a regulation that we didn't have policy for, we just started to move and started to communicate. So like the policy helps, but we were aware of this and starting to communicate this with teachers and their calendars and with principals in some of our annual calendars, our leadership tools, that this is the expectation, and that they're out of compliance if they're running field trips without it. We also, as a standard practice, our health services team is required to have a list of everybody who's CPR first aid trained within the school. This has always been something we do. And we've always, as a health services team, kept that list just like we do the vaccination records. Nobody's ever none of the counties have ever inspected us for that. They've started doing that, which is great. But we know, you'd be surprised. There's more people trained than probably we think, because we have been keeping lists and we have been running these courses. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a jump for a lot of schools. And most of the schools that have robust outdoor ed programs have actually gone above and beyond. And I think of like Basalt Middle School, I think most of their staff is wilderness first responder trained, which is a far more advanced training than first aid CPR. So I think we're gonna be okay.
Do we know how long those trainings last? Do they need to be re-upped every year, which is at least in the past when I know I had my CPR, like it had to be a yearly thing that you got retrained?
That you do kind of a skills check. I'm not exactly sure on the cadence of those. I think first aid's like 3 years. It's a little bit longer. But our nurses keep the records of who's got what trainings, what their credentials are, and then they're running trainings that are a little quicker in terms of making it efficient. But we definitely hear your concerns about one more lift on teachers and one more challenge and potential barrier to put on them before they can walk kids down to the river, take kids to the library, walk outside the building. So.
Okay. The only question I had, Chief Cole, was for the JLCDA for students with food allergies. On the reasonable accommodations, it states shopping, well, on this healthcare plan and the food allergy section. One of my concerns is that there are a lot of students who might be on an IEP or might have a plan that are on special diets that don't necessarily cause anaphylaxis. So I'm just wondering if we can add some language to ensure that we're counting students who have food diets that may not be like a severe food allergy. I think that's important to know because I'm fully aware of kiddos that might be on diets that we need to ensure are included in this policy.
So are you thinking that would look like in the reasonable accommodations paragraph, something about dietary restrictions and how we are similarly reducing the student's exposure to kind of a thing?
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, and typically the IEP does have some sort of food allergy noted, but I think it'd be important for the kids that don't have IEP that we include.
I'm sorry,
Dietary restrictions, I think.
something like that is what you're speaking to, that beyond just allergies, that can we ensure that we're making got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I see those notes. Yeah, we can work on that. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, directors, we will now have 5 minutes for open discussion.
I do have a follow-up question, if it's okay. On JLCE in that 4th paragraph that's in red, I'm a little confused because it says treatment of injuries occurring outside school jurisdiction. Defined as, and then it seems like everything in red is in school jurisdiction. So define district property at school or school sanctioned events when students are being transported in any vehicle by the district. That seems like all part of school jurisdiction. That seems contradictory to me.
Yes, Maureen, I'm thinking of that, the eat, shoots and leaves, comma, grammatical component of how important where commas go. What we were trying to do in the red was define what school jurisdiction was, not hint to what an outside school, not give an example of what an outside school jurisdiction is.
Okay.
So that's why we added it, because we kind of said, well, where are the lines with what's in school jurisdiction and out? And so I don't know if
Maybe
there's
just clarify that a little bit.
better punctuation.
Maybe parentheses.
We can do that. Yeah, that might work. Okay.
In
Totally
other
get it.
words, outside of these things.
Right, right. Yeah, we were trying to help clarify that, but clearly that comma threw us off.
Yeah.
Okay.
That comma is powerful.
Yeah, I like the parentheses, but I will defer to see on grammar there. Okay.
I actually also have a question now that I think about it. I know that this week, there was a bill that came forward regarding, ensuring that all of our, IEPs, IHPs, and 504s were provided, in the language of the parent prior to the meeting. I believe that happened this week. I just want to make sure that we are keeping an eye on if that bill were to move forward and be signed by the governor. I want to make sure we bring this back up to have that added language.
Yeah, that to me, that's a practice that we follow. I mean, I'd be really curious to talk to the sped team on that and the nursing teams on that. I know it's a best practice, and I'm not actually sure that if that does become like law, if it would be in this policy, it might be in a different.
Well, I'm
I don't know,
assuming
but we'll
it
have to-
would be in our other policies, but I think in order to align both of them, and I may be mistaken, but I think in order for us to have alignment, it might be good to insert it too. Regardless, I think it'd be important for us to be aware.
For sure.
I guess I still would like to bring up the part of having to be first aid and CPR certified. I just want to know if this is something that we as a district are saying this is what we want to do, or is it the state saying this is something we need to do? Because it just seems like there's so many circumstances. If I look at my career as a teacher, I took the kids to the park. We went out to pick up trash. All the different ways in which we would do something like that. Maybe one person on the 5th grade team needs to be for when we go on a field trip. But now when I just leave the school with my school children with the walking field trip permission form that you have, am I not allowed to do that anymore? And I just think it's something that needs to have further examination.
I would just say to follow up on that, if there is an opportunity for professional development to come into the school, I mean, you know, we've done that professionally where we've taken an afternoon or a day in which a team can be trained in an event that the person that was intended to go on that field trip maybe is out sick that day. And now that is the one, trained individual that is no longer able, that field trip can't continue. So again, maybe even partnering with any CMC outside organizations that can come in and provide an opportunity so that it didn't seem like one additional thing that our teachers or our staff needed to go out and explore and take
Right.
additional time in doing. So
that is definitely how we do it now with the nurses. And for a long time in the early childhood world, you have to have 100% of that team first aid CPR certified, right? So we have a pretty robust system to have our school nurses come to the early childhood centers during training to kind of get the whole team through it. And they'll just kind of work in shifts to move everybody through that training. Director Tyler, I really hear your concern.
Okay.
And from the health services team, it would be like, this is a no-brainer. You're sending kids out into the community. Somebody should be CPR certified, first aid. That's pretty standard. But I also share with you that like, we often have cell coverage. We can call 911, like those, like, where's the line? Because it's time, right? It's time, it's annual. I can tell you principals are not psyched to think that they'd have to get closer to, if 100% of their staff is taking kids on field trips because we are an expeditionary learning school. It's big.
So maybe
It's
it can be start of the year when we have those extra days. Maybe that's built in at the start of the year, or I don't.
Well, I think there's also an opportunity to maybe work with partners, like CMC, who might be able to get grant funding to ensure that our teachers are able to get this at free price. We do have 2 board members here, 3, who have worked for CMC, who might have good relationships, who could help us. But I think it'd be important for us to try to make sure that we could provide this to our teachers at a free rate and make sure that, like, if we can make it as easy as possible. I mean, who doesn't want to be CPR certified? Really good to have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when our nurses go do it, there's no charge. It's on their clock, their work day. But and we've had teams go and partner with the fire department has come and do it. It's done it. It's just time for our teachers. Yeah, we're not asking them to pay for it.
Thank
We're
you.
to do it outside of work time.
And then I'll just add really quickly a couple of things that one, it is our understanding that it's a state requirement. And so first of all, and then secondly, we don't intend to make it effective, one day to the next. I think our perspective is that this is something that would really be we'd be looking to implement at the beginning of the next school year and forward facing. And then ultimately, I think we have an understanding that you as the board who approve these policies, and then I, as a superintendent with our team, are responsible for implementing the policies, that there of course would be some leeway. So, you approve it on the third read at the first May meeting. That doesn't mean that, the next day we got to cancel field trips because we don't have a CPR certified teacher on.
Thank you.
Does this policy also include the training and use of Narcan? Are we supplying at least the high schools with that?
We included that in our medication administration policy. And so it's a separate policy where you all added that component. I think if you remember, it was maybe December that we needed the policy inclusion of the enabling the administration of Narcan. So we've got that covered.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Oh, Director Klumberg.
Hi, I just wanted to say a couple things on this. I think that our policy is not exactly in accordance with the state rule. The state rule is that there has to be a member on duty in each school. So the state rule doesn't say that it has to be someone who's actually on the trip. So I don't think that we're out of compliance with anything right now, to Director Teitler's point. It seems like there's some that might not have been the intent of the state rule, but that is the language in the state rule. So I think there is that variant. And then I don't know if it helps to ease any concerns, Director Teitler, but it's really easy to get this now. It's offered free online through so many different sources. And I don't think it's going to be a huge ask. It's a short amount of time. And, I think it would be great to have more people on staff that do have it. So just those 2 points.
Yeah, the ruling language you can see is in the comment in the second paragraph.
But that also includes offsite.
But the person who has to be on duty is a person within each school, not a person who's offsite with the children.
The next business in order is information on the 2023 board election and action to appoint a designated election official. Is there a motion?
I move that the board appoint Kelsey Bean as the district's designated election official.
I second this motion.
Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions. Director Klumberg.
Hi, I just want to say that as we head into election season with 3 open board seats, I wanted to put out there publicly that I hope that we have some willing volunteers from our community, because as we all know, it's no easy task sitting in these seats. And it's also very important and crucial to the system that we have dedicated board members. So just a note to encourage people from the community to think about it, learn more about it, reach out to those of us who are currently on the board, and hopefully throw your hat in the ring if there are vacancies.
Director Torres.
I just echo those sentiments. And, if anybody wants to meet with any of us to ask how this experience has been, happy to share. So encourage folks to reach out.
Director Teitler.
I would just say the same. I hope people sign up and run for office.
Director Stepp.
Ditto. Yeah, please reach out and look at the district map too, because that's important for which district, and you have to live within the district. So the election packet is very laid out and very specific, and the timelines are all listed there in the document. So it's, you know, you have to figure out by mid-July if your intent, or end of July if you intend to run.
And I guess I would just echo everyone, this board has always been open and willing to talk to our community, our constituents, students, staff, faculty about not only this role, but obviously about everything. And you know, we got elected November 2019, right before a pandemic. And so it has been a wild ride, but I think we all have been consistent and committed to the outcomes of our students. I feel like we've shared that we are very proud of the progress we've made in a short amount of time. And I also think, you know, it's important to state, obviously, that you do have to be a registered elector of the district for at least 12 consecutive months before the election. And you do have to get a petition signed with at least 50 constituents of the district. So I think it's really important for us to be able to share the facts of this role and how you can become involved. And there are many ways to get involved, but we obviously think that this role really directs the future of the district. So we encourage anyone and everyone who might be interested to please reach out to us. We're happy to take your phone calls, emails, and to share all of the fun stuff we've been able to do. Okay. Directors, we will now have 5 minutes for open discussion. Okay. Call for the vote.
Can I ask who made the motion? I missed that. Does anyone remember?
We made it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Director Tyler,
Aye.
Director Stepp,
Aye.
Director Ramirez.
Aye.
Director Torres,
Aye.
Director Gardner.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you. Okay, the next business in order is board reports and comments. We will begin with Director Ford.
So there was a Roaring Fork School District Foundation meeting held this week. Unfortunately, due to work conflicts, I was unable to attend. I will be reaching out to Kelly Medina to get the minutes of that meeting, and then I am happy to share that with the board. I, just didn't get an opportunity and to touch base with Kelly, and she didn't have the minutes by the time this meeting took place. So that just took place. That meeting was, I believe, yesterday.
Director Taylor.
So for the Meadowood Housing Project, we have just recently gotten the 100% construction documents. So along the processes, you have like temporary documents from the architects and the land management and all the different aspects of what needs to go into it. And they're sort of along the way, mostly how you would expect they're going to be. But now we have the final documents, which will allow the company FCI, who's doing the building for us, to go out and collect sub bids and to coordinate the permit review for the building project. And so hopefully all that will come in, and then we'll get a better look at how our actual budget comes in and where we stand on our projected budget, because up until now, it's all just been a projected budget. But hopefully within the next month or so, we should be getting a better idea of where we're actually standing financially on the project, and still hoping to break ground sometime in early June.
Thank you. Director Stepp.
I just want to re-emphasize what Superintendent Rodriguez said at the beginning about the feedback on the portrait of a graduate from the Roaring Fork School District and our core values. That committee met last week, and so I'm happy to be a part of it. And I'm really excited about all the different avenues that we're using to get that feedback. So if you haven't already, take a survey or talk to somebody on the committee. I also want to thank Chief Park and her work on the concurrent enrollment agreements between the school district and the CMC and providing pathways for students into post-secondary training. The program is growing, and so it's exciting to be a part of that. And like somebody said earlier, we kind of inherited a mess, and so Chief Park has been very diligent in getting clarification and working out all the kinks there. So. And then lastly, my work with Ben Bonfock and the opportunities for career and technical education continue. And the group and from the Valley that has been working on this for the past year in conjunction with Aspen Community Foundation is meeting next week. And all of the school districts are now invited into that conversation. And we are looking at partnering with a consultant group that will help us develop a vision for what work-based learning might look like. So that is moving forward as well. So exciting times.
Thank you, Director Kuhlenberg.
Chief Markham and I are at, as Director Ramirez mentioned, we're at the Economics certificate training, which is hosted by the Georgetown McCourt School of Public Policy. So it was an exciting day full of learning and also just challenging our current thinking on the way that budgeting is used and how budgeting can be used to impact student outcomes. And so I'm excited to get back and share that with the board and the district. I think that just in day one, we've learned a lot. So it's a 2-day in-person program and then 6 additional weeks online. The other thing that I want to propose and, hopefully have further conversations about is I think that it would be wise of us as a board to reach out to the Equity Advisory Council and Chief Cole and take this opportunity and time to consider adding an equity-focused policy that defines what equity is for us as a board and as a district. We have so much work being done around this with varying degrees of understanding and ideas about how it's implemented. And so I think it would be a good time to do that. And so I hope that we can explore that as a board in the coming months.
Thank you. I guess I would just add that along those lines, I think it would be a good time to open up the opportunity to have a conversation on having an equity audit. I think that is something that I've pushed for before in the past. And I think now that we've had conversations and that this board is committed to the work, we have a leader that is willing to work with us on that. I think it's important for us to be able to bring that forward. I also wanted to bring forward a opportunity for conversations for our board to talk about a policy in respect to representation on committees. I think this board has had many occasions where we weren't aware that a committee or a foundation existed. And so I think it would be wise for us to have a conversation on how we could create a policy in which any entity or organization that works with our district, whether it's through programming or whether it's through funding or whether it's through being in our schools, that we have a relationship with them and have a seat on their board. I think it's important just because of the mere fact that they're part of what we do. And if we can create alignment, I think it'll be important so that we can avoid situations that we have in the recent months. So I think it'd be important for us to consider, and I'm happy to add it to the board tracker, but I think it's just important for us to have that conversation as a team of if we do have a representative, whether it's the superintendent or someone appointed by the superintendent, that we as a board are made aware. So that way we know that we are having and being in communication and having and being in spaces where I think it's appropriate, like Mountain Family, you know, who has student-based health centers in our schools. I guess, now we will move on to our final agenda item, appreciation. Director Tyler.
I would like to appreciate especially the student voice that we have in our district. And I think today was a good example of students coming out and standing behind what they believe in. And anytime that our students stand up for what they believe in, I think we're better off as a district for that. So I want to say thank you to all the students who put themselves on the line and do something that is difficult yet very important and a great learning opportunity for them. And also thank you to those of you who stayed around for the rest of the meeting. And for those people who might be listening online, thank you for showing your interest.
Director Step.
Yeah, I kind of want to know what Director Tyler said. The level of engagement that we've seen lately is encouraging. I think it's even more than when we were dealing with a pandemic. So it just shows that people are passionate about education. And I think that's so important. And I think that we will continue to have disagreements and we will continue to have important conversations. And this is the place to do it in our open, public board meetings, or reaching out to us directly. Hearing that you're doing a bad job in the paper is hard, but, everyone has a right to share their thoughts and feelings, but just know that we're doing the best we can. We have the best of intentions. We all want the same thing. And so how we get there is through collaboration and hard work. And we will continue to do that for everyone.
Director Kuhlenberg.
I have two. I want to especially call out Chief Markham again and our entire finance team, in part because I've been, as they've been telling us, flexing our finance muscles all day and getting an understanding and wrapping your head around a lot of these concepts is incredibly difficult and so incredibly important. So a special shout out to everyone within our district that works in that capacity, and to Chief Markham for leading that team. And then, wanted to echo Director Tyler and Director Stepp in thanking every member of the community who is being involved right now and who is seeking to hold our district and this board accountable. As tough as it is to be in this seat and be held to that, it's incredibly important. And I truly believe that it is the way the system is intended to work. So I appreciate it. I hope that we can continue to have conversations. I will continue to speak to anyone who does respond and is willing to speak to me directly, as I'm sure every other member of this board will do. And I hope that we can continue to engage in a way that is efficient, effective, and moves the needle for our students.
Thank you, Director Torres.
I first and foremost want to thank students. Anytime students come to a meeting, I am always impressed. I spoke with a member out in our audience who is from a different school district, and she was just really impressed and amazed by the engagement, by the attendance, by the students. And as a mom of a mother of a 16 and a 12-year-old, I hope that my kids feel the courage to speak in a public setting like this, because it is one thing to be up here as an adult, and it's another to be a student, being willing to put yourself out there. So again, I'm very proud to be a part of this district. And again, and also to be part of this team. We don't always agree, but we come at it with various perspectives and we support one another. So I think this has been an experience that maybe we'll write in a memoir someday. But this nonetheless is a district in which we could be really proud to be a part of.
I want to appreciate everyone who was here today. I've learned something about myself tonight. I do not know how to cut people off. Dr. Rodriguez kept looking at me, and I will work on that. I want to also appreciate the schools in Glenwood Springs who have invited me for events, for different opportunities that I've had in the recent months. I think one of the beautiful things about our district is that our students are such a wide range of voices and lived experience. And I got to meet with the mom and her daughter yesterday who were on the opposite end of the spectrum of a lot of our students that we heard today. And just being able to have that relationship where she felt that she could reach out, we could set up a time to talk and have a discussion, I think was really important. So I appreciate the opportunities for those that, I appreciate the opportunities for those who give us the opportunity to meet with them and to have a fruitful discussion. I think it's important for us to be able to hold those conversations. And I also want to appreciate my husband tonight. It is his birthday, and I think all of us have shared that it can be very sacrificial to be in this role. But I think that I have mentioned to Director Torres, just seeing her husband out there sometimes makes it feel like we get to be supported by our families who I know really care about us being able to do this role and to support us. So thank you to all of our spouses. All right. If there is no further business and there is no objection, the meeting will be adjourned. It is 8:52. It's okay. I honestly, I told Melvin, I'm like, you want to come to my work meeting? And he's like,